Ron Hosko is a former assistant director of the FBI. He's in our Washington bureau. Ron, you've been with us all day. This happened on a peak weekend night in a crowded space with limited exits. What does that suggest to you?
Well, it suggests that Mr. Mateen perhaps selected this target for that very reason. A confined space with limited ways in and out sets himself up for, in effect, a shooting gallery. And when you come in with weapons like this, a semi-automatic handgun, and certainly an AR-15 style rifle, there is going to be a powerful impact on the people who are at the business end of those weapons. We referred to years ago as American forces went into Baghdad as shock and awe, and unfortunately that's what a lot of these patrons were going to be facing when the noise and the flame from those weapons started. There's going to be a delay in your reaction as you're trying to process what's going on in front of me. And that delay is advantageous to the shooter in this situation. So I am sure that some of those victims met their fate because of the delay in their reaction of finding an exit and heading for that exit.
Ron, it sounds to me like what you're saying as well is that the shooter would not necessarily have had to have any kind of sophisticated training in order to carry out an attack like this.
Yeah, I think that in some of these cases, those commenting, have overblown how sophisticated the attacks might be. With some basic training in the use of a semi-automatic handgun or in a rifle like this, you can learn to function that weapon pretty well if you spend a little bit of time on the range, changing magazines and recycling your weapon. They're the type of weapon where in a standard magazine of an AR-15 is 30 rounds. So you imagine the damage that you can do with 30 rounds in that magazine, pause for a second, change a magazine, put a new one in, and start shooting again. It doesn't take tremendous sophistication. This is not, even though these are military-style weapons, it doesn't take military-style training or law enforcement training to be proficient in their use and to cause great harm.
Ron, we've been asking this question pretty much all day. We know the FBI investigated the shooter twice after he made comments in the past about affiliations with terror groups. Would you have expected him at least to be on a watch list?
Not necessarily. You have to remember there are a couple things that limit the FBI. First is a document known as the DIOG. It is 1.5 inches thick of guidelines that the FBI goes by, and they take it very, very seriously, that limit the techniques that they can use to conduct an investigation and limit the duration of that investigation if you can't determine that there is a meaningful threat to national security or a criminal conspiracy or activity afoot. And so the FBI is obligated at a certain point to shut that investigation down. Now, I think there is room for the discussion, like the congressman had mentioned, revisiting those guidelines and perhaps having discussions about, can I put in place record checks that follow that person around for a fixed duration of time, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, so that if they take some steps like purchasing a weapon or multiple weapons, the FBI can reinitiate the investigation and go back. But the other thing that constrains the FBI and limits them is resources. Nationally, somewhere around 13,000 FBI agents today. Some of them are managers, some of them are at FBI headquarters. So the foot soldiers of the FBI every day have a caseload. It's a big caseload, and the managers have to prioritize who should be at the top of our list for surveillance, for more intensive means of watching somebody, and what cases do we have to say we're closing this case because it's not there.
So ultimately, Ron, does it surprise you that the shooter was able to get a concealed carry permit?
It really doesn't. It sounds like this shooter was engaged as some sort of security officer. I haven't been told about prior arrests that would disqualify him. We haven't been told about mental illness that might potentially disqualify him from possessing a weapon, going and making a weapon purchase. And so without those things in place, not a surprise that a U.S. citizen can go out and buy a weapon. But I think there's room to have conversations about how we proceed going forward, not just resources, not just the FBI's guidelines and how we evaluate that, but this part about looking back at someone. And the Tsarnaevs were another example of that. There were references in this case to the Tsarnaev brothers and some criticisms of the FBI about what they should have known after their case was closed. That's not the FBI today, and there's room to have that conversation, I think, and improve things for all of us.
Ron Hosko, thank you so much for your perspective. Appreciate it.
Sure.